So I just saw Ant-Man Quantumania and it was bad. It was really, really, really bad. And this is coming from somebody that's seen every Marvel movie in theaters. I watched every Disney Plus show. I rode every ride. I really wanted to like this. I grew up with the MCU. I waited 15 hours to get into the Marvel Hall H panel. I'm a big fan of it all, but there's a big problem. It's all mid. It wasn't always like this though. When I used to watch a Marvel movie, I cared about the characters. I cared about the stakes, even if it was a forgettable villain and I knew everybody was going to be okay in the end. Now that these movies aren't about these little rocks and they're about saving the entire multiverse, every movie's just turned into the same thing. The world around our characters is crumbling and we need to save a teenage girl to stop it. And it's actually like this. Like, they actually need to save a teenage girl in pretty much every single movie that's come out in the last 3 years. It's been like 5 movies now where the stakes have been there's some teenage girl and a washed up superhero needs to save them to save the universe. And I get it. We're supposed to care about the young Avengers and we're supposed to care about what comes next. And these guys are getting old. And we're gonna love superhero movies for the next 500 years. And I'm not the only one that's seen the downward trend in Marvel content over the past few years. It's not only in quality, but it's also in originality. And I feel like it's really hurt the integrity of one of the most revered cinematic experiments in history. We're coming off the most Marvel-saturated year in history, with 8 projects releasing in 2022, and the wear's starting to show. So on today's episode of YouTube, let's break down exactly what's wrong with the MCU and why this new Ant-Man movie is the lowest point of the franchise so far. And yeah, I'm gonna talk about spoilers. Go see the movie or don't see the movie, I don't know. It's mid. So buckle up because I'm going to talk about spoilers because I'm not going to not talk about the movie because you didn't see the movie. Don't watch the video if you don't want to hear spoilers. I don't know. And while you're here, how about hitting the like button and hitting the subscribe button if you like what you see. Let's start the video. I think the formula is broken. Pre-Endgame, sure, I guess you could say that most of these movies feel the same. You have the same forgettable villain and the same spooky space rock to collect, all with a different coat of paint. But the relationships here and the differences in their internal conflicts are what make these movies work. It's why we care more about the stakes in Endgame and Infinity War than we do in Justice League. For many, myself included, we grew up with these characters. And for many of these movies, these things are all contained. Lots of stuff happening on Earth and most of it's happening in New York. But then there are movies like Guardians of the Galaxy that are set in space and are completely separate from the rest except for these little rocks. So you get to know these characters and what they're like and what their stories are for full franchises. And then you mash them all together in this huge event movie. You take these two characters like Peter Quill and Tony Stark, 2 self-obsessed narcissists, and you put them in the same room together. And everyone's like, wow, whoa, oh my god, it's the guys, it's the 2 guys, I love them. And it's small moments like that that makes the MCU work. There are these little links in between movies that make you feel like you're watching something bigger. But post-Endgame, these things just don't work. It feels like returning characters like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and Thor are all washed up and they just need to learn how to love some kid. And I think at its core, that's interesting. I think it kind of humanizes them. It takes these larger-than-life superheroes and shows what they're like after they save the universe. Like, they peaked, what are they going to do now? But I just think it's too strict of a structure to build an entire cinematic universe on. A movie like Thor Ragnarok works because it allowed Taika Waititi to be himself, and he made something that's unique to him while still hitting the Marvel story beats. I feel like there hasn't been something since Endgame that feels that unique, like it has a personality outside of the MCU. But I also feel like there's been no movement in tying any of this stuff together. So we're just in this stalemate of bad movie, bad universe that seems inescapable. And these sidekicks are just part of the problem, whether it's America Chavez or Cassie Lang or the girl in Thor. This trope of not trading lives and no man left behind seems ridiculous when the stakes are the entire universe. Like, the entire plot of Wakanda Forever is we need to save some Harvard kid from the guys from Avatar 2 in exchange for both of their secret civilizations. It just all feels so frustrating, but I feel like the biggest offender is this new Ant-Man movie. And I'm going to talk about spoilers for the new Ant-Man. I'm going to do it right now, so click off if you don't like the spoilers, but I'm going to talk about it right now. So if you don't want to see the movie because it's pretty mid, you could just watch this and I'll make a funny joke about it and we can all laugh about it. Okay, it's happening right now. So here's the real meat and potatoes. It's the reason I'm making the video. It's the thing that dragged me out of bed, dragged me off the couch, put me in the car, and got me into a movie theater. It's Ant-Man Quantumania. It's the third Ant-Man. But it kind of feels like it's the first Ant-Man Quantumania movie. Like you could literally not see the other ones and get the exact same experience I did. The Ant-Man movies were never my favorite, but they were at least unique in the rest of the Marvel canon. They were low stakes. The bad guy in the first movie just looks like beta Andrew Tate. And I literally have no idea what happened in the second movie. You could put a gun to my head and I wouldn't be able to tell you what happened in the second movie. But at their core, it's just a movie about Paul Rudd being an ex-con and doing a little heist and getting really small and then getting really big again. And then Michael Peña's in it and he does the funny thing where he does drunk history and he's like, oh, hey, remember when we stole that big thing and then we made it small and then we made it big again? Like, whoa, isn't that so funny? And everybody laughs because they love Michael Peña. I love Michael Peña. Michael Peña is my favorite actor. I love Ant-Man. Ant-Man is my favorite Marvel character. But then you watch this movie and Michael Peña's just not in it. He's not mentioned at all. It's like he literally Thanos snapped out of the MCU. Nobody talks about him. He's probably the part that most people remember about the Ant-Man movies, and he's not even mentioned for a second. This movie just throws what Ant-Man was overboard. Low stakes, gone. San Francisco, gone. Michael Peña, in the trash. Instead, we're transported to the world of the quantum realm, or as I like to call it, small space, where we meet all kinds of Rick and Morty characters like the whole guy and the guy who has a ringtone on his forehead, or the guy that looks like he's going to be an exclusive Funko Pop. So Paul Rudd's daughter, Cassie, makes a little ham radio that transmits to small space, but she doesn't know that there's life down there, so I don't know what she's transmitting to. And then they're all sucked into it through the radio and onto this green screen soundstage for 2 hours. And I think we all know that Marvel's had some rough CGI in the past few years, but this is by far the worst. The whole movie takes place in small space, and it never ceases to amaze me how it all looks. When I'm watching Star Wars, even the new ones, it looks like these characters are living on these planets and they're living in space, like they're really there. When I'm watching this, it looks like Paul Rudd and Michelle Pfeiffer got into costumes and showed up to set 20 minutes late. So the sets are awful, but by far the worst part of all of this is MODOK. I like MODOK. He's a silly character. I think the Patton Oswalt show they made about him is funny. They poke fun at how ridiculous it is. The name is stupid. The backstory is stupid. He looks ridiculous. And they try to play it off in the movie by having the characters talk about how ridiculous he looks. But why would you put this in the movie? He's a big head. We get it. But every time he took off the mask, and he kept on taking off the mask, the whole theater erupted in laughter. Like way harder than any of the actual jokes in the movie. George Lopez literally did this in Shark Boy and Lava Girl with 1/10 of the budget. It's the exact same character. There's just so many small problems with the movie and so many things that just fell flat. I thought it was ridiculous that Michelle Pfeiffer beat around the bush for half the movie about what she did in the quantum realm, and it literally killed like 1,000 people. I also thought it was ridiculous that they literally remade that Paul Rudd movie, Living With Yourself, and they made him say what the hell like 1,000,000 times. And the fact that they're setting up Kang as Thanos 2 when a really big guy and like 100 ants just killed him, it's ridiculous. The writing is consistently bad. And sure, it felt like a Rick and Morty episode, but maybe that's because they hired a writer on Rick and Morty to write this movie. I didn't find any of the side characters endearing. They all just felt like Justin Roiland fever dream knockoffs. Take a shot every time Scott says, Cassie! Take a shot every time Scott and Cassie have a very long embrace. Take a shot every time Hope does a little smile into the camera. Take 10 shots every time a joke falls flat in the movie theater. But putting all of that aside, I think that the worst part of this movie is that it takes a main Avenger like Ant-Man and just shoves it into this ridiculous movie for no reason. Scott Lang isn't a space traveler. He has no reason to be in this movie. They took everything that made Ant-Man unique and replaced it with a husk of itself so that they could build up Kang and milk him for the next 3 years. I do think that Jonathan Majors is the best part of this movie, and I think that Kang is going to be great down the line. He just feels so incredibly out of place, and it doesn't help that his story is ridiculous too. Like, Kang is stranded here because he can't power up his Herman Miller chair and kill everyone. And going into this, I was like, okay, well, this makes sense. The only time we've seen time travel in the MCU is with Pym particles. So Kang needs Scott to give him the Pym particles to recharge the chair so that he can go time travel. But instead, Michelle Pfeiffer just made his power core really small, and they just need to make it big again. Like, the use case for Ant-Man is so stupid. Like, okay, an object is really small. We have somebody to go do really small things, but only really small things. We have a spider guy to do spider things, but he's just a better insect. Also, why do Ant-Man and Cassie not fly? Like, they have no reason to not fly. I feel like they would be much safer if they could just fly around, right? Whatever, who cares? It's a superhero movie. So yeah, I thought it was ridiculous. And honestly, I think it might be the beginning of the end for Marvel. Looking back at other Marvel misses like Thor: The Dark World, it's an objectively bad movie with objectively bad lore that gets completely replaced in the next one. This formula though, this phase 4, phase 5 formula we're stuck in, it's just sucked everything special out of the MCU to build something that I don't think anybody even wants. And maybe I'm missing the mark. Maybe there's tons of kids that are walking around the house in their America Chavez jean jackets. It just feels like what used to just work at Marvel is broken. And things really need to change if Marvel wants to get back on track. Kevin Feige's been talking about slowing down and focusing on quality versus quantity, but I think that they could output the same amount. There's just no reason to hire unique directors if you're going to tell the same story over and over again in every movie. Okay, that's it. That's the rant. I'm still going to watch the next one, and I'm probably going to watch the one after that, and maybe I'll like it more than this. I'm just happy they gave Greg Turkington and the stinky guy from I Think You Should Leave another gig. Okay, bye.